This is the Pro Perspective from House Pro, where home builders, designers, and industry experts share their views on running a modern firm.
Want to know one of the secrets to sustainable success in the design-build industry? It all starts with how you price your projects. Join us as I sit down with Andy Wells, president and owner of Normandy Remodeling, as he shares his 45 years of experience finding the perfect balance between pricing strategy and profit margins. Hi, everybody. I'm Liza Hausman. I'm the Vice President of Industry Marketing here at House, and I'm very excited to welcome today's podcast guest, Andy Wells. Andy's the president and owner of Normandy Remodeling. They're a design-build remodeler specializing in home additions and major home remodels in the Chicago area. We're excited to have him here today to share his wisdom on scaling a remodeling business. And there are three kind of main areas we were going to focus on today: pricing your services, thinking about profitability, competitiveness, market condition, building a sales team that can kind of execute on that pricing model, and then we'll close a little bit with some of the lessons learned. So Andy, welcome.
Thank you.
Maybe we could start by having you share just a little more about yourself personally and how you got started in the industry.
I came from a background of accounting. I went to accounting school, became a CPA, worked in public accounting for 6 years. My wife, now of 29 years, her father started this company with a partner 45 years ago. I got to be friends with my father-in-law, and he said, "Why don't you come work here?" And I didn't really know much about carpentry or electrical, but I did know something about business, and my lifelong dream was going to be to own a business. So I thought, well, this is a nice start. So I got into business in 97. It's been a long 27-year road to get to where we are today, but it's been great. It's a tough but exciting business.
So that's a long time. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about how Normandy Remodeling has evolved over the years. Maybe how big was it when you joined, and how large is it now, and how have things changed over time?
Well, started in 79 and started growing from there, got to about a level of $5 to $7 million with the sales force back in the early mid 80s, and then kind of leveled off and stayed that way for about 10 years. Me joining in 97, we were about $5.5 million company. And then, as you may or may not remember, or people may, the building craze happened because of the lead up to the Great Recession was you could borrow money on your house with basically a heartbeat. So people had access to a ton of money. Houses were going up in value, and our customers were borrowing that home equity and building a lot of large additions. So from 97 to 07, we grew from about 5.5 million to 27.5. So about fivefold. I don't take credit for growing our business that way. I do take some credit for managing that crazy growth. And then, of course, that whole model of people borrowing all this money really easily and spending it led to the crash of the real estate market and the Great Recession. And that just hammered us. We fell within 2 years to about 40% of where we were, which was brutal. Spent 5, 6, 7 years rebuilding, and today we're averaging around $30 plus million in revenue. I will say one major shift. Pre-recession, we did a lot more. The bulk of our business was actual construction and additions and big. We don't build any new houses. It's all on people's houses, but it was mostly additions. And the market shifted greatly for us after the crash, because people before were borrowing money on the value of their home from a bank. After the recession, you couldn't really borrow that money because house prices went down. And so you had to choose to spend your own money, and they spent it on interior remodeling. So pre-recession, we had 2 kitchen designers, and we built that team. Now we have 13 or 14. So we had a lot more focus on building an interior remodeling team with a lot of kitchens.
Interesting. Well, you certainly survived and thrived better than I think the majority of companies, and obviously so many went out of business. So impressive that you guys were able to pivot and serve the market that was there post-recession.
Yeah, I will say that wasn't our genius to say let's pivot. It was the phone was ringing for kitchens and baths, and we're like, hey, we got to do kitchens and baths more, and so we built that section a lot more.
You made it happen,
right?
So maybe we can talk a little bit about pricing. And when you and I spoke earlier, I think I shared that it's a question we get a lot from folks in the industry that are looking to kind of get to the next level, who are often surprised that projects aren't profitable, or who are concerned about pricing a project competitively, or who struggle to kind of communicate the value. So maybe you could walk us through some of the basic principles of how you think about setting prices and a pricing structure that's sustainable.
Let me get back up 1 second and just give you a little context. So doing around 30 million, our average job size is about 183,000 these days. So generally don't do jobs that are under 100 very much anymore, up to 5, 6, 7, 800,000. We really don't specialize in jobs $1 million plus. So that's kind of our target market. But then going into setting prices, coming from the financial world and the accounting world, and from all these years' experience, I have to say, if somebody's trying to operate a business without a budget, it's kind of like going on a trip without a map. You kind of got to put, a plan together. And I would start with overhead. What is my rent? Or if you don't have rent, what's my truck and my cell phone package? Write down your overhead of things that you're going to spend money on, no matter what happens with how much you sell or how much you sell it for. And then, of course, have accurate costs of your projects. And if you do some reverse math to say at the end of the year, I want to make X dollars or X percent, you have to set your price such that you can get there. And folks, that's a little bit broader than just finding out that a job didn't make money, but also that you as a company or you as a private sole proprietor make money for a whole year. So you have to build into your price, not only covering the costs, the direct costs of the job, materials and labor, but what's it cost to run your business. And so it is what it is. If you sell it for less, you won't make money. It's pretty easy. And if you're afraid of market conditions that I'm not going to sell anything, I know hundreds of remodelers who have said, well, in my market, you can't get that. Yeah, you can. You can. You have to.
So going back to this, looking not just at the profitability of the job, but the profitability of the company, how do you balance the kind of price with the number of jobs and that you think you're going to do for that year? And how do you start thinking about that from just kind of a risk assessment? So you can estimate, but if you are assuming a price of X and you don't sell that many jobs, how do you think about pricing to kind of cover that risk a little bit? Or how are you adjusting those estimates maybe throughout the year based on what you're seeing in terms of your sell rate?
Well, I think we don't really adjust our price too much based on demand or lack thereof. It's more on what we know we're going to spend. And there's a lot of planning that goes into, at the level we're at, we kind of have a lot of leading indicators. So you kind of, and in remodeling, it's kind of a slower sales process than other businesses. So your best leading indicator is, what are your leads? And if your leads are slow, you're not going to have as many sales just because there aren't as many opportunities, which leads into how many sales you have, which leads to how many production people you need. So I would say throughout the year, more of our pricing changes are in the last couple of years, especially 2021 and 2, was inflationary, and making sure you were covering the cost of several price increases throughout the year. And that hurt us because it takes a long time to build these projects, and you sell one and the price goes up twice before you buy it, you make less money on that. So there is that risk, but I think part of the overall theme of this whole conversation is you have to price it and sell it such that you make some profit, and then you just having some retained earnings and some money in the bank is also a hedge against, performance not being what you hoped.
And what do you consider to be a healthy profit margin? Let's maybe start there.
Well, when you say that, there's two numbers that you really look at. It's your gross profit, which is your sales price minus the direct cost of building the job. Then you have to look at the bundle of all your overhead, your general and administrative expenses. And my overhead's probably going to be more than somebody who has only a couple employees and maybe not even a location. So you have to build in that number, and then budget for a net income, which could be, profit. But I think a good company running well should strive for a 10% net income. So then your gross profit has to depend on what are your overhead costs to get there. So two different businesses could both make 10% net income with a different overhead structure and thus different pricing.
Got it. Are there, you talked about those two profit numbers. Are there other kind of KPIs or key indicators that you look at to kind of track profitability at the project or company level?
Yeah, on a job by job basis, we have a budget for each job and each line item, and you kind of track as you go through the build that you're keeping your costs in line with your estimate for, say, masonry. If you have 10,000 in for masonry and you build it for 10,000, you're right on budget. If you're not getting that done for 10,000, then you're not going to make as much money. Just to go back to that gross profit number, for our case, we strive for a 42% gross profit, and that's to get us to a target of covering our overhead and making a net income.
And would you say that number has changed over time as you've built a bigger team? So, how would a $5 million company think about it versus a $30 million company, for example?
Well, that's interesting because I know a lot of businesses around that I've met over the years, and there are a lot of very, very profitable $5 million companies who have the same kind of markup and selling price that we have. But there are also some, at $5 million, you may have less overhead and maybe not need quite as much of a markup. But, part of the selling process is, I'm jumping forward a little bit, is to deliver value. And to be able to deliver plenty of value and expertise, you have to charge for it so you can get that expertise and give that value. But a $5 million company may not have as much overhead, but you have to then sell the value of what a customer is getting for the money.
And I do want to dig into that, but before we get into that, because I know you said, we do hear a lot about folks being concerned about pricing competitively and not being able to get a certain price, and we should definitely drill into that. But you mentioned a little bit earlier, having price adjustments for inflation and multiple price adjustments through the year. So tell us a little bit about what you've learned, I guess, over the years about the impact of inflation and how you're addressing it now.
Well, we got spanked in 2021. Bad. It was so fast. Historically, prices have not increased that fast in my career in remodeling. And so historically, we've really honed in on our major vendors like windows, cabinets, plumbing suppliers to give us plenty of advanced warning when they're proposing a price increase. Typically, windows and cabinets had one in March, let's say, every year. We'd tell them, give us 4 months so we can build it into our pricing model. So when we sell it and then order it, we've got that amount built in for those products. What we didn't anticipate was the massive amount of increases and the number of them in 2021 And so what we started to do that year was look at commodity prices on a monthly and quarterly basis, so we could just not necessarily to know exactly what a 2x4 costs, but if it's $1 today and $2 tomorrow, it just doubled. We need to adjust the pricing for lumber, and so we look at a bunch of commodity prices like copper and copper wire and different lumber, plywood, and kind of get a feel for where's the market heading, so we can try to build that in as fast as we need to.
Got it. And is it something you address contractually as well at all? Is there something, did you make any changes to your contracts in terms of being able to, address crazy price increases? Or
we do sort of. We put in allowances for the large pieces, like a cabinet package. So here's an allowance of $30,000, and if it comes out, when we are ordering at $33,000, we recoup the difference, because you can very easily separate that, or a window package. But as far as lumber, when we sell, we're not giving the quantity and the price of each piece of lumber. So without offering that information up front, there's no way you can charge for a difference later, because they don't know what the starting point was. We're not that granular, and so again, historically, it's never really been an issue. But in super inflated times, the other thing we did in 2022 was kind of understanding, as we watched monthly product prices going up, we just built in a 5%. I don't even know the number. Some number that says it's going to cost more. Let's put it in our estimate now, and then when it costs more, we've got it covered. Which we don't do anymore, because increases have slowed down.
Right, flattened off. That makes sense. And hopefully we won't face it again.
Right. That was brutal.
Definitely tough. I mean, obviously you weren't the only firm. I'm sure when you talk to your colleagues, everyone was facing the same issues and struggling with the same kind of.
Well, and the reason we really couldn't recoup that was because we sell a fixed contract.
Right.
If your time and materials, then it is what it is. So it didn't really matter. We don't do that.
Did you consider moving away from a fixed contract? Or
No, because there's something really, really important in the sales process to tell a customer this is what it costs. If you're buying a car, you wouldn't go and the salesman say it's going to be 45, maybe 50,000. You want the price. What is the price of the car? So we would definitely want to have a fixed price that says you can make this decision because you know the price based on these variables, based on these allowances and these material selections that we've pre-laid out.
Makes a lot of sense. I mean, and I think that's a good segue to, this idea of how do you command that price? Because it's going to be a fixed price. That's important for the client, but it's also going to be a price that you can be profitable on the project with, right? And that might be a premium to what they've heard or what they expected. So maybe talk a little bit about, how you approach educating prospective clients about pricing and the value you provide.
One of the tools we use has been around forever. It's Remodeling Magazine's Price versus Value report, and it just kind of it's very, very generic. It's actually been not really favorable in the last few years because the value of return on investment has been low for many things. So this is a definite want purchase by people. You're not going to get 120% out of your investment in this remodel, but that just gives you a starting point. So the thing about this business is there is no Kelley Blue Book to go see what a new Acura costs. You can't find out the price of a thing because it's no thing. It's a nebulous design and products and experience, and but at least you give them an idea. And then we really load them up in the beginning of the sales process with renderings. So we do color 3D renderings that allow them to envision the project where they may not have that ability generally without it. We do a very detailed scope of work to say, here's everything that's included, and really highlight some of the things that we feel like some of our competitors may not necessarily highlight, and it would be an extra later. I mean, that's the scourge of our business, is people feel like I'm going to get change ordered to death later. They're going to lowball me, and it happens. And we really try to go in and say, all these things are included. So if you're comparing us, make sure you're going to need this. So make sure it's in your, and then we usually offer maybe 3 options of size and scope of a project, as well as then offering options of what to do within the project to give the customer put them in the driver's seat of choosing what they want to do.
Yep, the good, better, best. Yeah.
Good, better, best, along with pieces you can put together.
Right. You're part of the decision, right? You're part of the decision-making process. It's not just off the shelf. There's some.
Yes. It's not just yes or no.
Yeah. Not just yes.
It's this or this. Yeah.
So it sounds like there's kind of a few, if I kind of structure this, there's the sort of transparency of the estimate itself, and you're putting a lot of detail into it, is one way that you're kind of, building that trust in the fixed price, and they know what they're going to get. And then there's some intangibles, which is kind of the level of service that you're providing, and the with the visualization, et cetera, right? That they're going to kind of get this hand holding and comfort level that's a little bit more intangible than the cost side of it. And then there's sort of this feeling of giving them a feeling of agency in the process as well, where they haven't just relinquished control, right, on something that they're spending a lot of money on. I know that comes up frequently. You think those are kind of three main buckets? Or are there any other kind of key things that you think help justify, the price or get clients comfortable?
Well, I think one of the key things we focus on in our company with our sales team is to really build a relationship that fosters trust. Because you're buying something that you can't test drive, a car. I mean, I go back to car, but it's an easy analogy. You can go test drive a car. You like it or you don't. You can't test drive your addition or your remodel. And if people view what we do as a commodity, then it's just based on price. So I've developed a little easy, sales topic with our newer salespeople, and we really focus a lot on the customer has to, they buy 3 things. They buy in this order. They buy you, number 1, the salesperson, over the company. If we have a great company, but if you don't connect with the client, they're never going to buy from you. So that's number 1. Number 2 is the design. They got to love it. It's got to solve their problems. And the third thing they're buying is price. Now, if you don't develop the relationship, number 1 and 3 flip positions, and it becomes price, design, you, and you're a commodity, and you haven't built the value of them seeing, I want to work with this person. I feel like I can trust them to get me through this scary, nasty time. And you build that trust by offering up all the things you're going to bring to the table in this remodel through our company.
So obviously that human connection is key.
Yeah, because they really have a little bit of level of distrust, and
right. They want to know someone's responsible, right? That they've got somebody to contact at the end of the day, right? That
right.
There's somebody who's on their side or in it for them. And I guess what kind of price objections come up, and then how does that salesperson address them beyond the personal touch?
Well, the only one is it's too much, and then you have to dive into why. And
right.
And generally, you know, generally we try to work through that objection throughout the interaction, so the sale is a natural progression of this relationship. You don't go through all this effort and then say, okay, now it's 200,000. They go, oh my gosh, I thought it'd be 50. So you have to condition it throughout the process by showing value. Part of the value we show is we have 2 design studios and we have a bunch of product selections here. So a client can do most of their shopping here for tile and cabinets and countertops and most everything, which means they don't have to go to 7 different stores. So it's a real time saver for these busy people. But you're conditioning throughout. These cabinets would be approximately 25% more than these cabinets. So you're showing them product that's included in this price that you're giving them, not an estimate, but literally a price. So we right now, our closing ratio is phenomenal this year. Historically, it's we call it 1 out of, we don't call it 20%, but 1 out of 5 would be 20%. We're at about 1 out of 3.4 this year. I mean, we've hit a groove. It's been phenomenal this year for us. Generally, it's about 1 out of 4.3 or 1 out of 4.5 team wide. So we are. So what happens to the other 2.4 people? I think
question.
Some of them find out what it really takes to remodel. They didn't know. They don't have the Kelly Blue Book of room additions or kitchen remodeling, and they go, "Wow, that's too much for us." And I think some of them go to a competitor, but we're getting our fair share.
It's impressive to hear, because we hear from a lot of firms that customers are a little slower to pull the trigger this year. What do you attribute the improvement to?
I feel like, and it has slowed down in May a little bit, I got to be honest, but our team is just re-engaged. They're fired up. They got burned out in COVID. It was brutal. It was tough. It was nasty. And work-life balance came into the mix. Now we have the opportunity to work remotely like we're doing right now. So we've put in a lot of tools to help them not spend time commuting maybe. And our jobs are closing well, and inflation has, so people's mindset is good. And I also got to say our 2 sales managers are superstars, and they are really helping these folks be successful.
So we talked a little bit when we met earlier about the sales managers, and that you've got 21 sales designers. Right. Which, that number may be mind-blowing to a lot of folks listening. But how do I get from, I'm the owner selling to, I've started to hire a sales team to I've got 21 sales designers. So we'd love to hear a little bit about how your sales model works specifically, and maybe kind of thoughts you have for those owners that are thinking about that next step of starting to hand it off to a team.
Well, again, I've shared with lots of remodelers over the years. I've been in groups and met so many people, and it's the scariest thing is to go from being the salesperson to giving up that control. I came in the business, we already had a sales team. So I was in sales for 3 years, but the advice I give to people who want to start building a team is to, especially if you do a mix of work like us, we do additions, but also interior remodeling. The interior remodeling is a little bit easier of a hire to make and to pass off. So get an interior design person, partner as an owner, partner up with them to show them how to do it, and give them plenty of direction and oversight, but then give them the reins and let them try. You have to understand that it's not going to be you. And we have a varying degree of talent here. I'd say it's all very good, but there's definitely people who are better at some aspects of design than others. But we still monitor, customers' happiness and things like that. So we have great people, so that you can't start from 0 salespeople to 21 overnight. It took a long time. So that'd be the first thing I would offer up, is get an interior design person. Our sales people that we've hired the last 10 years or more have all had a design background. They went to architecture school if they're in our addition section, and they've usually gone to interior design school. And what we found, and we've had other folks in sales who were not trained in design and they were more in sales. They didn't have the passion for the design and for the products. And people with the passion enough to go to school for it love this business, and it flows through in the relationship building. And you have to kind of teach them how to sell. But again, we're not a hard close. Here's the 21 closes to get over the objection and make them buy today. It's kind of make it all, and if they love it, they'll buy it. So then getting more and more salespeople, we definitely had to put together a written sales process that people can read, but also you can train on and say, okay, today we're going to go over this section. Ours is 4 pages on Word. It's not short, but it's not, a 100-page book that you got to learn. And you can reference parts of it. There are definite steps we've picked out that you have to go through and do these things to, we call it the full Monty, to put together the whole package and present about what goes into that and the backstory of it. And then now at our point, we have 2 sales managers who run these 2 teams that we've split up a little bit. And there are quite a few veterans who don't need much sales management. It's more kind of a monthly therapy session to just talk about what's going on in their life. But then newer people who are less experienced, it's about I wouldn't say managing, but maybe it is micromanaging on a project level.
Okay.
So it's a review of the design. Does it work? Does it make sense? Is it good for the home? Is it something that we want to do? There's certain things we don't want to do. It's about reviewing the price. And it's then about strategizing on how are you going to show the value and have this discussion with your client. And that's on a job-by-job basis. And then when the job's built, we review how did it come out against your estimate. Because our sales designers do their own estimating.
So they learn by doing, but with some guidance.
For sure. And then after you have a track record, you don't need so much review.
Now the trust is there and they know the business. And
they know how it's going. Yeah.
They know what to sell for your company in particular.
Right.
Interesting. And again, I know you came in and there was already a sales team, but kind of tying this back to the original pricing discussion, how do you have that mindset change of paying commission and charging the higher prices that you need to cover the additional salespeople, and kind of doing the math to say, all right, the goal of hiring this person, and I guess there can be multiple goals, right? Do you want to sell more work, or do you want to spend your time as the business owner on other things?
Right. Well, you have to get out of the mindset that you're the only one who can make rain, but you have to pay somebody to go do that. And so if you are a solo sales team and business owner, and at the end of the year you make 10%, but you're not paying a salesperson, you have to still do that to make the business work. If you want to spend your time elsewhere working on your business, you have to pay people to do that. Just like you could be the carpenter who goes out and builds an addition and not pay a carpenter, but then you spent your time doing that and you're getting paid to be a carpenter, not the business owner. So it's just part of the cost. Imagine it's just like a trade. You have to pay the electrician. If you do it yourself, you don't have to pay him. You could make more money, but you can't do everything.
Right. Got to figure out where you can get the most leverage. Right.
So it just has to be part of the equation, and they bring tons of value to the client. I can't. We sell a couple hundred jobs a year. I can't talk to everybody. I don't want to talk to them. If I talk to somebody, there's a problem. It's rare, but there's a problem. So,
Right. It's good. No news is good news for you on the conversation front.
Right.
Well, so that's interesting. What is the scope of that sales designer role? Do they stay involved from, to the very end? And what is their, obviously they're selling, but how broad is the job? What are they doing?
great question. I think in all my travels around, we're different than most companies. The general taught methodology is to have a sales team and a design team, and the salespeople are meeting customers and getting projects into the pipeline, and the design team is creating a design for that salesperson to go sell. Perhaps they meet with the client too, and then maybe you have an estimator who gets trades to bid on things. We have that all combined in one. So it's a hard job. They are selling, but by doing that, they're meeting the client, they're coming up with the design, they're estimating it because they know the job better than anybody else. So lots of training and estimating for us and reviewing. But then they also do the selections where they're meeting with the client to pick out all their fun stuff. And then they review the plans and walk through the client approving, here's the job. We then hand it off for production. But our sales designers stay involved. The good ones, have a relationship with that client beyond the job. And that's where I think a differentiator for this type of team is we get a ton of referral and repeat business, a ton, because there's a personal relationship. One of our two sales managers, I actually trained a million years ago, and she became friends with one of her early clients, and she still gets a Christmas card. She went to their kids' weddings. She goes to their Christmas party. I mean, this is 15 years ago, and they're still friends. So by having that connection, that really builds a book of business for somebody in our world.
So two questions coming out of that, because I think that's super interesting. One is, so are they actually going to the job site and checking on the progress and not just
after it goes to the field, they stay involved, and they'll go out maybe every week or two and meet with the superintendent. Other places call it a project manager, but that's the person running the job, and go over details, maybe meet with the customer. Probably not these days. Most customers, well, actually these days customers are home. It used to be everybody was at work, but they stay involved, and then they communicate with the client. I was at your house today, and I saw that the hood went up. It looks beautiful. Let me know if you need anything. And if they do need anything, they'll communicate with that sales designer.
Got it. So they are actually going out there. That's great. Great to hear. And then second, obviously, if it sounds like longevity with your company and retention is super important. You mentioned, implementing remote work practices and things that kind of help with work-life balance. What else are you doing to retain these folks so that they, you're getting value out of those relationships that they're building for the long term?
Well, I feel like my passion is to have a business where I like to come to work and I want other people to like to work here. So we are very high on company culture around the team, not the sales team, the whole company. So I would say generally we all get along pretty well, and we're all here with the goal of getting these projects built and making customers happy. So it kind of got to be somebody that we like on the team, and so you like coming to work. We also have a lot of support for people. So we have some design development support. We have some product consultants that help support, because it's a really hard job to connect the design passion with the sales aspect. With you got to estimate it, and then it's hard to get. That's a hard person to get up and running, and not everybody can do it. So we do support that team effort a lot, and we also recognize. I guess this is not a reason people say, but we have started recognizing anniversaries, and we've got people. One guy was just in our sales team 25 years this year.
Wow.
He's been here half his life.
That's amazing. Yeah.
It's and he's built a very good life for himself. Another thing is we pay very well, because it's a hard job that requires a lot. So you should make a career. It's not a job, it's a career. And the longevity that I talked about a little bit about those referrals and repeats, you kind of, we don't do that many. You don't do an annual job for a customer. You do one, maybe two, maybe three.
Lifetime.
You're building a referral book of business. And by being here for 10, 15, 20 years, you got a whole long list of customers who are singing your praises. And that helps you sell more, because it's better and easier to sell a referral than it is a cold lead, frankly. So yeah, it's treating people fairly. There's no games. There's no hiding costs and messing with their pay, or it's being upfront and transparent about everything.
Does a large portion of the team interview potential new hires, given the importance of the kind of culture and fit? How do you handle that?
I wouldn't say a large portion. Generally, if we're going to hire for the sales team, our sales managers will do the initial interviews. Then I'll interview. Then we'll send them out with one or two people, and we tell them it's to see what the job is and see if they'd like it. Really, secretly, it's for our person to be riding around in a car with this potential candidate to see if they're normal.
Right.
Yeah. So not too many. Yeah, we don't make all perfect hires, but we've been very fortunate in getting quite a few.
And other than that design background, that kind of passion for the industry, is there anything else that you kind of look for in the background, or how broad a skill set, can be successful in this role?
Well, I don't know if there's a skill set you can say. It's personality. You can't train personality really. So they got to kind of have people skills that they can connect with customers. We do look for some computer literacy, because one of the things, especially in these days, being nimble is really important to sales success, so that if there are some minor changes, you can just make them instead of waiting 2 weeks for somebody else to make them. So, and thinking on their feet, I'd say, and I just going real back just a second, I talked about the salesperson's role. One of the things that other companies sometimes do is take out that selection process of all those materials. Our people would fight you for that. That's the part they really love. And so it comes through, that passion comes through when we're meeting with their client, like, look at this new grout.
100%. Yep.
So you couldn't take that away from them. And that feeling is felt by the customer so much, about their passion for this stuff.
I love it. So it's interesting, because we, and maybe we'll kind of do our wrap on this topic, but we talked a little bit about execution. It sounds like a lot of what I'm hearing in these themes is execution oriented, right? That the folks are kind of detail oriented and focused on really delivering for the client, and that these things are what add up to profitability, right? In an effective sales process.
Well, I came from the accounting world. Most people think that's nerdy and, introvert and stuff like that. But I figured out sales, and I didn't come from a sales background. But the biggest thing I figured out, two things: be on time, and do what you're going to say you do. So you say you're going to do. If you say, I'm going to have this for you, have it. Don't not have it. It's about providing setting expectations and meeting or beating them. It's not that hard, but you'd be surprised how many people don't follow up on those little details and things. And that's part of the sales management, is say, did you do this piece? Did you do that piece? Because all those little pieces add up to, and any one of them at any time can break a relationship, and you don't get the sale for something stupid.
And it seems like that's part of the company culture, because you say it shouldn't be hard, right? But if you think about when the industry has a bad reputation, right, it's exactly right, for lack of execution, not doing what you say you're not going to do, or that you're going to do, or setting expectations poorly. So it's super interesting that in some ways doing something simple but doing it right is one of the keys to success.
Right.
Awesome. Well, Andy, I want to thank you for spending this time with us and our community, who are really going to benefit from all the, advice. And I appreciate you sharing your personal experiences in the business too. I think folks always love to hear stories. So thank you again. We loved having you on the show, and hope to have you back sometime in the future.
Well, thanks very much for inviting me. It was fun.
This series is brought to you by House Pro. To learn more about our best-in-class software for winning clients, managing projects, and simplifying your workflow, visit house.com/pro.